This show is sponsored by Realtor Cynthia Bear, Putting Down Roots. Visit your in-town real estate specialist in Atlanta at cynthiabaer.com.
You are now tuned in to the Good Gracious Show. Welcome.
Howdy, Good Gracious family. It is Sunday, March 3rd, 2018. This is Boyd Baker on the Good Gracious Show podcast, episode 127. Yes, it is raining buckets here in Georgia, and it's another rainy night, which feels like every other rainy night in our wettest. Maybe it's not global warming, it's global wetting we are experiencing here in the South. I don't know, but it's driving me a little batty. Fortunately, we had some dry weather this morning, but I hear it's wet for a bit, and then we get some cold. So we go from the 60s back down to the 40s, you know? Just wait a moment. The weather will change, so keep all your clothes out. You don't know what you're going to need at any given point in time. And before you know it, it's going to be summer again. So I hope you're doing well. I sat down with actually four different folks, two different interviews for this episode. I've talked with Mark Kendall in the past. He's an improv actor with Dad's Garage and Dark Side of the Room. Well, he and Theresa Davis, a wonderful spoken word poet, who both of those have been on my live show, Good Gracious Show, on the stage, and they've been fantastic. But the two of them are cooking up some Madmen and Poets insanity over at Dad's Garage, and I think you ought to check it out. Put it on your radar and get to a show. But they are really creative folks, and it was nice kind of digging in and trying to learn how each of them plies their craft, especially when they both try to share a stage. At the same time, I had Trey Wright and Laura Coyle come in. It's Trey and Laura duo. Talk some music, talk about their jazz stylings. Yeah, that's it. Trey's a pretty fascinating guy, and that he works in music at Kennesaw State, and then also plays around town, and just recently recorded a CD. So I've listened to it. It's really fantastic. Some very good and eclectic jazz put together. And Laura Coyle, I've had her on the show in the past. She's a wonderful singer, and this is a new project for her. I'll let them tell you about it. So I hope you enjoy.
So my name is Trey Wright. I'm a jazz guitarist in the area, and I just put out a new CD entitled Begin Again that features my duo partner, vocalist Laura Coyle.
So I'm Laura. I'm a vocalist. I'm also an illustrator by day, but I'm starting to do music less as a side hustle and more as a full-time gig. So we've been playing together now for a couple years, and that's been great.
It's become a hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and a logistical hustle too, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
You know, it's not a band you're having to deal with, but even just two schedules of busy folks is not always the easiest.
Right. It can be that way, but it is generally a lot easier with just two people, booking and having rehearsals and all of that kind of thing. We even have a calendar that we share online so we can get coordinated.
It's like a little family, you know? It's like, I have to do it with my family.
Right.
Yes. Like, look on the Google calendar. If it's not on there, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We don't do that. Well, how did you guys come together or find each other?
That's a good question. We started playing together sort of casually, I don't know, 6-7 years ago maybe.
Yeah.
Laura would hire me for some of her gigs just as, a local musician in town.
Eye candy.
Yeah. No.
No. Like, I need beefcake. I need beefcake for this.
Yeah. Eye candy. That doesn't exactly work out right. But just as sort of a bandmate. And then around 2017, 2 years ago, we started really focusing on this as a group. And a lot of it had to do with exactly what you described before. I mean, trying to schedule rehearsals and band meetings and blah, blah, blah.
With 4 or 5 people or something.
It was a nightmare. So with just one person, it's like, we can do this.
Yeah.
We're adults now. We can manage one calendar. And
Well, how did you know Trey, or how did you know of Trey?
Well, I definitely knew him from playing at jam sessions around town. And like he said, I would hire him because he's one of the jazz guitarists you call in Atlanta. So I would hire you for a gig here and there. And we were just talking about this before. I had done some work with Joe Granston and his big band. He hired me for a holiday season. And so I got to play a whole bunch of gigs back to back, which is really different for me because I've just been sort of part-time at this. And I was like, wow, you really get better when you're playing, right after the other like that. So that's when we started talking about, we had a gig together and, we're like, hey, this is kind of working, So we talked about forming a duo, and it turned out to be a good chance to play a lot more often than I was. So.
Well, I mean, do you find that, when you say you improve, do you find that you improve gig by gig on what you learn from yourself, or is it some of it play off of what you're learning from Trey?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, certainly the more we play together, the more we develop sort of that wordless communication. And it's kind of amazing the things that happen when you're like, wow, I knew what you were doing there. I knew where you were going there, but I didn't see it maybe I saw it on your face or I heard it or whatever, but it's such a subtle thing. You can't get that unless you're playing a lot together. Yep. So. Yeah,
and I don't think people realize that, that goes on in sports and business, but in music, just because you have the music and you have the lyrics down, it doesn't mean that it's always going to go that way.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you can always improve, right?
I think having the chance to have done as many gigs as we have over the past 2 years, there's really a comfort level that arises, and you can take chances. I jokingly call them trust falls, where she might sing something and I'll go, well, this chord's not in the song, but I think it'll match what she's singing.
Yeah.
And you sort of hold on tight, and I know, I hope she trusts me enough to know that if the ship starts sinking, I'm going to write it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's your job. Yeah.
Yes, that's my job. Write the ship.
Yeah. So the name is just your two names.
Yeah. Laura Coyle and Trey Wright.
Well, hey, it keeps it simple, right?
Yeah.
It does.
You can put all your Facebook posts all together, all the social media, you already have them. So.
Right. That's true.
So what's your day gig, Trey, when you're not?
Sure. So my day gig is I'm a professor of music at Kennesaw State University. I run the jazz guitar and jazz combo programs up there. So.
Now, that almost seems like cheating because you get to
like
practice every day.
Yes.
I mean, do you go home and go, yeah, I'm going to pick up a guitar now?
No.
Yeah.
No, I do in the mornings, but by the end of the day, I'm like, I'm kind of done with this.
Yeah.
It's great, though. I really love it. I love mentoring students. And I also get to teach fun courses like the history of rock and roll. We just launched a study abroad program. I get to teach a jazz in Europe course in Europe, so that's pretty exciting.
Did you create that, or somebody bring that to the table?
Someone created the program, and then I was brought on as co-director, and then I created the course. So I had no idea what was going on in the prep for the course. But once we got over there, it all worked out.
Wow. I bet that's... So when you say jazz in Europe, what exactly is that? Just kind of a historical tour more, or are there stylistic issues?
Kind of all the above. So when we tend to think of jazz, we tend to think of this American-made music coming out of New Orleans, the common narrative that we're familiar with. But one of the things that's really fascinating is that because jazz came of age at the time in which media really came of age, jazz spread very, very quickly. And also through the World Wars, Europe really became a hotbed of jazz. And they began to assimilate American styles and develop their own styles, such as the gypsy jazz of Django Reinhardt, which is very much still alive today. So it's kind of all-encompassing. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, well, that must be great to be able to take a bunch of kids over and
yes,
and get to go to Europe.
So the next step is figuring out how we can get the duo over
there.
there.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be
Get
a
to
work in
work.
progress.
You need to
Get
enroll
right
in a
that.
class or two, maybe, Laura.
That's right. Yeah.
I thought about that angle. That's
See?
good.
No, yeah. Just come here for all their nice backdoor ideas. So I'm going to pause here because the train of thought just left.
All right.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any plans on recording together? What's going on?
We do. We're working on it. We've just through this couple of years that we've been working, we've kind of developed a lot of arrangements, a lot of not written down arrangements, but
That's true.
but arrangements nonetheless, and we're working on some originals too. So with that, we will eventually do a recording.
So with the originals, is that coming from you and you, or are we working through other songwriters, or what's going on there?
We're still developing kind of our process.
We're trying to agree to disagree on what we're going to agree on.
We'll see.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, for me, I've actually always struggled with writing with other people. I think it can be really challenging, but so far this has been fairly seamless in that, I just send her random voice memos, on my phone as I sort of come up with stuff, and we kind of work back and forth, and just kind of taking it from there.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, you never know where it's going to go, right? So when you pitch yourselves out there to play for events and special concerts, is it just standard jazz? Do you kind of cover the world? How do you pigeonhole yourselves if you had to?
Well, I think it's complicated because, I think most people, when they think of like a jazz duo, they have this idea in their head that there's very much background music being played at a cocktail party or
Very
something.
nice cocktail party.
Yes, very nice cocktail party.
Yeah.
But we're trying to take a little bit of a different approach. I think both of us have been influenced by singer-songwriters as well. So we play a mix of jazz standards by Cole Porter, Hoagy Carmichael. We're both very influenced by Brazilian music. So we play a lot of that.
A lot of bossa nova.
A lot of bossa nova. And then we also play some songs by like Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon. And I think our goal is to present a concert that is engaging. Just as engaging as like when you might sing a singer-songwriter and they talk about the songs and they have a rapport together. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish, except kind of do it in the jazz world.
Nice. Well, that's good. Well, you just came out with a CD, right? How long did it take you to get that together?
A year. So we recorded it in May, and then I knew I was going to Europe for that program, so I put it on the shelf and then came back to it in the fall. So
originals, standards. What's the?
It's a mix of that. It's mostly originals. There's 7 originals. There's a version of Joni Mitchell's "Hissing of Summer Lawns" that Laura Coyle sings on, and then a song by a good friend of mine, Carl Lindbergh, entitled
Looking at each other.
Thank you. See?
Teamwork.
This is how the writing...
That's it.
Right.
Seamless.
She finishes my thoughts. Awesome.
Well, that's great. Well, do you have any big shows coming up, or are you just kind of looking into 2019?
March the 1st, right?
March the 1st at the Red Light Cafe. I'm doing a CD release. As part of that, I have some of the faculty members from KSU, Sam Skelton on saxophone, Mark Miller on bass, and Justin Chisarek on drums. And as part of that, we're going to do a little duo mini set, and then we'll play songs from the CD, and then we're also going to play some of the Joni Mitchell program that we played at KSU last fall.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
So what was that exactly? What was the at KSU?
So every year I do a faculty recital there, and I try to put different things together.
Okay, so what does that mean? The faculty recital, is that faculty members are in the recital, or it's...
Generally, yes, and we have what we call the faculty parliament. Which, do you know what a parliament is?
It's a group of owls. That's
You're
Funkadelic.
incredible.
That much
You're
I
the
know.
only person who has ever gotten.
Oh, really?
That. Yes.
I'm sorry.
I had to have it
wow.
explained to me. The
Really?
director Sam Skelton came up with it, and I was like, "What?
Oh, that's because you guys are the owls.
Were they
Yeah.
owls?"
KSU.
It's all coming full
Gotcha.
So
circle.
when it's a small
Oh.
group, we play with the partialment. Anyways, so we have the Parliament plays once a semester, and then once a year I do a recital on my own. I did a duo recital with Laura in 2017, and for 2018 I had read the Joni Mitchell biography that came out, Reckless Daughter.
I read it too.
Yeah.
What a great book.
Yeah, we both kind of became obsessed with it, so I thought it would be kind of fun to recreate her songs with Laura and also jazz quartet sort of combined. So
Nice. Wow. Well, never would have thought the kind of a sweet spot for music where you sit there, especially at Kennesaw State. Having access and getting to think about music all day on some level, and then also being able to bring in people that can help influence you. That's really great.
yeah, it's awesome.
Well, that's right. Well, if people want to find out where you're playing or what's going on, how to hire you if that needs to be done, how do they do that? What's the best way?
Well, our duo website is lauratreyduo.com. So that's the best place to reach us for duo things. And then we each have our own website. I'm lauracoylejazz.com.
And I'm TreyWright.com. Again, very creative.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much for
having
having
us.
us.
Alone together, beyond the crowd, above the world. We're not too proud to cling together. We're strong as long as we're together. Alone together, the blinding rain, the starless nights were not in vain, for we're together. And what is there to fear here together? Our love is as deep as the sea. Our love is as great as a love can be. And we can weather the great unknown if we're alone together. Ooh, oh, 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 oh. When we're alone, when we're alone, when we're alone, when we're alone, alone together, beyond the crowd, above the world. We're not too proud to cling together. We're strong as long as we're together. Alone together, the blinding rain, the starless nights were not in vain, for we're together. And what is there to fear here together? Our love is as deep as the sea, and our love is as great as a love can be. And we can weather the great unknown if we're alone together. Alone together, blinding rain, starless nights were not in vain, for we're together. And what is there to fear here together? Alone together, beyond the crowd, above the world. We're not too proud to cling together. We're strong as long as we're together. Our love is as deep as the sea, and our love is as great as a love can be. And we can weather the great unknown if we're alone. If we're alone, if we're alone,
My name is Mark Kendall. I'm an ensemble member with Dad's Garage Theater Company, and I'm a part of the improv poetry show at Dad's Garage called Madmen and Poets.
I am Theresa Davis. I'm a local poet, author, and slam champion. I host a couple of open mics around town. I host Art Amok Slam, and I host Java Speaks. And I help Mark do this crazy thing we do called Madmen and Poets.
Mm-hmm. So you're the madman. She's the poet. Is this kind of like a Turner and Hooch, Cagney and Lacey? Is that what we're talking about?
It's an interesting. So like I've been really fascinated with the idea of collaborating with other local artists to do different and bigger shows, right? So my first collaboration was Poems and Pasties. And then, so that was like poetry and burlesque mashed up with, music and storytelling. And I did one for my book release. So instead of doing a book release party, I was like, we're doing Poems and Pasties.
Nice.
And we had a really great show. And people really liked it. Like this, the encore at the end was, when's the next one?
Yeah.
So I was like, cool. So I've always wanted to like play with comedy improv. I'm not an improver myself, although I think we should totally do an exchange program where the poets become the improvers one week, and then the improvers become the poets one week. We're going to work on that.
Yeah.
I might have just sprung it on Mark. But I think that the idea of, because a lot of poets write a lot of really funny poetry, and the idea of watching that improv is always it's been a great show. People love it.
So how did this come about?
I pitched it to Mark. He was like, "Yeah, let's do it," and we just be doing it.
And so is this a rehearsed piece, kind of literally improv poetry on top of improv, or are you?
It's set poetry. So these are poets who have been performing in and around Atlanta and the nation doing the poetry slam circuit. Most of them are slammers. We have some poets who are now like, I don't slam, but I want to do this. And so they're like, so it's sort of encouraging them to write, and try to be funny. Or not, because we've thrown some serious pieces in there and be like, ooh, this could get scary. And we've even had some moments where Mark has been like, okay, we're going to stop right here. It's about to get weird.
Yeah.
You
just hear Mark screaming, scene!
Right,
scene!
runs across.
Yeah.
And there was one show we did where Mark stood and like kind of went off a little bit and stormed out, and I was like, was that real?
Oh, yeah. So,
He was improv.
A couple months ago, I was hosting Madmen and Poets, but then I had a show that was starting, like another show that I had to get to that was going to start before Madmen and Poets ended. So I told a couple people, like, yo, I'm going to figure out a reason to storm out. I'm going to figure out a reason to leave, like, in the scene, as opposed to just like disappearing. Because in my mind, I was like, oh, that'll be less distracting.
Yeah.
But instead, I think what happened was I like started shouting and I like stormed out of the theater and just never came back.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
And then afterwards, people were just like, was everything okay? And I was like, oh, no, yeah. I just had to get to another show.
Yeah. That's funny.
You got to stay with us. Stay with us.
Yeah.
So what's the format, or what was the concept originally, whatever the case may be?
A poet does a poem. I think the first show we did like 2 poems, and then the improvers would just have at the material within both poems and do something. But now we do a single poem because there's a lot of material in them.
We're talking about a poem.
Yeah.
We're talking more on the spoken word side, where
Spoken
it might be
word
3
slam.
minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. Yeah. And then the improv can go anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. We had one that went on and stayed funny for a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
The president, we're not going to war, it's tea time. That was probably my favorite.
Yeah, it's because normally when we do improv shows, most of the time you go see an improv show when we're looking for inspiration for a scene to make something up off the top of our head. We go to an audience and we normally ask like, oh, what's in your pocket? What's your favorite animal, right? So oftentimes like one-word suggestions, and they can be great sometimes, but
yeah, you get a bad crowd, and that's a rough night.
Right. So, but there are all kinds of ways to draw inspiration to improvise from things, and so the way Madmen and Poets works is like Theresa was saying, a poem will come out tell a poem, and all the improvisers are also on stage watching that poem and listening very closely. And so from that, we'll then perform a short improv set using any part of that poem as inspiration. So if the poem was about, a breakup, you might see a breakup scene, or that breakup scene might make someone think about like pull apart bread, you know what I'm saying? And then you'll see a scene about pull apart bread, and so and then that's how it goes. There's no rehearsal in the sense that, like, the poems are memorized and they're great, but the improvisers, I bring improvisers from all around Atlanta. It's mostly Dad's Garage improvisers, but I make a point of inviting guests that maybe haven't played at Dad's before and, like, getting a new mix of people. Teresa's son played in a show once, which was awesome.
There's a guest cameo there.
Yeah,
like
more than a
Island,
cameo, and so I bring in guests, and they don't know, I don't know what the poems are going to be or what the subject matter is. So that's always a surprise for the improvisers that we don't know until the show starts.
And is it a certain set number of improvisers, or does it rotate?
It rotates. Like, I have regulars that are in most shows, but it rotates. And so, like, interest has, like, kind of grown as we started the show. So now I'll do a first half cast and a second half cast to get as many
more people to get out
improvisers
there.
in. So we'll have like 16, 18 improvisers in a show, which is a lot.
So you're having like 8 at a time?
Yeah. Sometimes like 8
Sometimes
or 9
more,
at a time.
yeah.
Sometimes more. Yeah.
I just love that everybody's interested in it. And that like, I mean, the first couple we did, Amber did them, and she cornered me, and I was like, am I about to be jacked up by an improviser? Because that's never happened to me before. And she was like, I need to do all of these. I'm like, but your schedule, you're not going to be able
She's
to.
a little busy.
Yeah, you're kind of busy.
Yeah.
But like, I love the interest in that people want to be a part of this, and now that the poets really want to be a part of this. So. So I mean, I think it's a collaboration that has a lot of legs and could have a lot of life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then, would you, let's say if you were the performer, would you do a poem, improv, and then another poem and improv, or is it all set? I mean, how long is the show?
Usually we try and do 2 45-minute halves.
Oh.
But last show was kind of interesting because it sort of ended a little different. So like.
You did awesomely.
Yeah, it was amazing. So we did a first half, and that went as normal. Then we did the second half of the show. We started that. And then, so we were at Dad's Garage, which is in the Old Fourth Ward. And so, like, 20 minutes into the second half of the show, the power started cutting in and out.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. The power started cutting in and out. And we were like, okay. So we just kind of rolled with it because,
You never know. It's
happen.
Atlanta. We're in a big
Things
city,
happen.
man.
But then we got towards the end of the show, and then the lights just went out completely. Like, the lights just, the power, like, for the whole block, went out. But we still had one poem left. Teresa still had a poem to give.
I was in the middle of it when the power went off.
Oh, right. Yeah. So what we did was we had all the audience members
just pull out their phones. Yeah, she just showed me that picture. That looked pretty incredible.
And, like, the thing that was crazy was you were going to tell one poem, but you switched it up, correct? Mm-hmm. And the poem, to me, the thing that I thought was so amazing about that moment was, your poem that you were telling was about being seen, and the audience was quite literally shining a light on you to see her. And that was a great end. And so people left the show, and they had to go out into the storm. I think it was a storm. It was storming.
Like
so it was just like we had this crazy end of the show. It was like, whoa!
Yeah.
And then everyone goes out into this rainstorm. It was just like the nuttiest end to a
that
show.
Was funny. Well, that also gives you, though, as performers, that gives you a different vibe because you're so used to having all the lights trained on you where you may not see the audience in quite the same way. Yeah. So when you change that lighting, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, that was really powerful.
That
was
is
really
cool.
powerful. Yeah.
So do you normally just do one poet a night, or do you are you trying to do a couple?
I try to get myself and then 3 other poets.
Nice of you to work yourself in there.
Hey,
I think that's very gracious.
I want to play too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that as producers and as people who put on shows, being a part of it makes all the work that you're doing that you're not actually getting paid for worth it. You know what I mean? Like I love working with other artists, and I know that the back leg part of it is not necessarily monetized, but there are all kinds of getting paid, and sometimes the getting paid is having an audience connect in a way to where they light you up with their phones, or just the conversations that happen afterwards, and getting people to think outside the box a little bit. I think that people have this one idea about poetry and how it is interpreted, and this one idea about what is comedy improv or what is improv itself. And I think mixing it up a little bit just kind of like keeps the audience on their toes, and it keeps them wanting to come back.
Yeah.
That last show sold out, and I'm hoping all the rest of them sell out as well.
That's good. I mean, that's not a small room. So people don't realize when you say sell out, I mean, if you work enough rooms in town, you go, that's an accomplishment right there, So when improv is handling this, I mean, I've seen lots of improv, but is there like a lead dog in that? When you said there's 6 or 8, and I was thinking, man, is everybody kind of jumping at the same time and then deciding who they're going to defer to go on that topic, or when you're just kicking it off?
Oh yeah, well fortunately, like I have my pick of all the best improvisers, so putting 8, 9 people on stage isn't really like a challenge. So if people are jumping in a lot, that's normally like a good thing, but everyone's experienced enough for it to not delve into chaos, or if it does, it's because we want it to be chaotic, So it's never been a problem, I would say.
Well, I just wonder, even for you, so if you're one of those, one of those 6 or 8, whatever it may be, and all of a sudden she ends her piece on, tea and biscuits, and you go, I got the best idea.
Yeah.
How do you get that in front of, Amber, who's next to you, who goes, no, I got the best. How do you, as an improver, figure out that?
Oh, well, I guess that's most of improv is like, one person brings one, the classic examples like, one scene partner might bring a brick, you might bring a brick, and then you combine those ideas together to build a scene.
But do you guys sit around and huddle before you go out? That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely not. No. So it's like...
I know, so how do you know? Because she's jumping from one end of the line, you're jumping from the middle.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just like, so a poet finishes their poem, they go sit back down, and then we just jump right into it.
Yeah. And there are times when you'll have 2 improvers jump up and they look at each other and they kind of check in.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm wondering.
They kind of check in. But I think that is just them being really good at their craft and realizing that, they're all there because they're excited to do this thing. And it's so funny because like when I watch them listening to the poems, I can see sometimes that that little eyebrow jump, like, ooh, I got an idea, but what I also love is that like some theme will happen, not necessarily a theme, but some phrase or some motion or some movement will happen in the beginning, and it carries throughout the show. Like it'll just keep popping up, and it's so funny because it kind of like it's like we've made a cohesive show out of insanity, and I love it because it's like that ties it together, and the improvers are paying that much attention,
right?
So like it's really I really love it. I really love it.
Well, okay, so now to flip to your side, now that you've been, and when did you guys start doing this?
I think we did the first one 3 years ago. We did it at 7 stages.
The first one was 7 stages. Or was it actually in the lobby of Dad's? We did it like a Thursday night a couple years ago.
We did like a sampler.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this about 3 years.
Perhaps, yeah. I forget.
I got a poster. I'll go check.
So is it on a regular timetable, or is it as we can fit it into the schedule of what's going on?
It's more as it fits into the schedule. So like currently we're
busy,
like
you're busy, popular people, man. You're jet setting.
Yeah. So sometimes it'll be quarterly, every other month. It just kind of depends. So it's trying to keep that right balance where it's just like, oh, it's fresh, but you haven't like completely forgotten about it.
Right. Well, so with this coming this way, and you feeling that vibe of what the spirit that you want to bring into the room, is this now coloring your poetry some, or are you using your poetry that's straight line, whatever it is, or are you thinking of poems now in the reference to, ooh, I'd like to write something that would work for that?
Yeah, I don't. That's not how I write.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I've never. I think, and when I have this conversation with a lot of people who talk about like at me being a slam poet, it's like I've never sat down and said, I'm going to write a slam poem. I just write poetry. Right. So whatever's moving me in the moment. I've been really pissed off the last couple of months because the world. And so I haven't written as much light stuff, but I'm trying to get like back to that lighter part. But we've been like eking in some poems that talk about some more serious issues.
Right.
And so far it's worked. And having a pro like Mark who can feel when, okay, this is getting weird, or this might be like tipping into that space. of not okay, and being and trusting that you're listening and you're paying attention and you'll catch that. But like I don't think that. But what I do think is happening is that people are writing more and they're trying to. Because even in the darkest stuff that I write, there's some levity. Even in the heartbreak, there are some moments that levity can exist. And the way I craft a poem is sometimes I have a poem that and we start off and it's really, really light, and then that turn happens and you're like, oh damn, now I'm feeling things everywhere. But I feel like the improvers are really good at catching the nuances in that and pushing the moments that work well in their craft.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in any really good art, there is dark and light, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't like to admit it, but that's the drama mask. There's the sad and the happy, and so those things come out. But it probably helps for some poems that might be a little on the heavier tone or have those striking moments where then you can follow it up with some improv that kind of brings some light so people can still remember that,
right?
But then couch it in an interesting way,
And that's what I think what I love about that process, because they may not necessarily hone in on the heartbreak, but you mentioned Swiss cheese. And I got some Swiss cheese. You know what I mean? So that's what I love about it, and I love the fact that everybody is listening because, I get the opportunity. I do my poem and I get to watch. So I'm watching the improvers, but I'm also watching the audience. And there's always a moment in one or two poems where they lean into each other. Like the audience leans in, and the improvers are leaning into the poets. And I'm like, yes, we're all banging the same drum right now. It's amazing. But no, and that's what I love. I love that idea of people who may not normally interact with each other having that moment of interaction, even if it's just for 2 45-minute sets,
right.
And several beers. We're connecting, and you're gonna go and have a conversation with somebody after this,
right?
I was a part of a panel the other day where they were talking. This guy was like, "But does it make a difference? Are you changing the world?" And I'm like, "That depends on what your definition of change is. If we get a couple to walk out of that room and have a conversation about something they've never talked about before, that's change. You know what I mean? If we get a parent asking a kid how they actually feel after they've heard a poem about a kid feeling things. You know what I mean? That's a change. Now, we're not there always to measure that change.
Right.
You'll
never know how much impact
right.
you have.
But that doesn't mean you don't do it.
Right.
You keep doing it. And we are making changes, We're changing how people view poetry. We're changing how people view improv. And we're changing a theater experience.
Yeah.
Into something that maybe they've never seen before or never been a part of before, and then hopefully we're making them hungry so they want more of it.
Yeah.
Closed mouth
So
don't get fed.
So then how this comes about? How does, I find it fascinating the different shows that Dad's does that most people don't realize the breadth. They think it's just an improv thing. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing all the time, and if you look at your calendar, it's all over the place. And multiple times a night, sometimes all over the place. Yeah. So is it set up at Dad's that if you're hanging out with Theresa having lunch and you guys come up with this Madman, you go back and you go, "Hey guys, can I have the space on Tuesday night? Can we do that?" How does something like this kind of evolve?
Sort of, yeah. So Theresa Davis had been a guest on our
my whole name.
Yeah. Theresa had been a guest for us several times on Dark Side of the Room, which is a improv group based out of Dad's Garage. We're an African American improv troupe, and we had her on our show a couple times. And I think John Carr and I were talking. John Carr, who's another ensemble member, we're just like, "Yo, we got to do a show with Theresa." And Teresa's like, "I'd like to do something." And so I think that's kind of like when the three of us started talking about something. So that first one, John kind of took the lead on like getting that Thursday test show, and we moved it to 7 stages, and then eventually like back to Dad's Garage on our main stage. But the short answer is yes. So if you are a company member at Dad's Garage, something that's really cool is if you have an improv idea that seems to have legs, and you're like, I'll see this through, make sure that it's not.
Yeah. You're going to do the work. You're going to do the due
make sure that
diligence.
it's totally tanked. Usually we'll put that in a Thursday 8 o'clock slot. So it's like if you come to Dad's Garage on a Thursday 8 o'clock slot,
You're the opener.
There's a good chance you're going to see like a new format.
A new thing,
That's usually where we put that thing. And then if it goes well, that will eventually become the programming that you see on Friday and Saturday night. So Madmen and Poets kind of took a similar route.
Trajectory.
And Dad's Garage is always very open about anyone pitching things. So just this past Sunday, in fact, we had season planning where anyone is available to come and pitch what they would like to see Dad's Garage do as far as like scripted content is concerned, and then anyone that's in the room is welcome to vote on it. So it's always very open in terms of like being able to pitch things. And then once you're a performer there, as far as pitching improv stuff, it's just a matter of finding time on the schedule to test it out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So in your feeling of how things have gone, how do you see Madman and Poets staying on the same as we can fit it into our busy schedules, or do you see it elevating to some other offshoot or anything? Do we know?
We don't know.
Do you guys
right
ever
now.
sit around and like think of world domination with it?
Well, we think of world domination. We just have different definitions. No, I hope to see it become something that is a regular thing that people, know. Like, in April, it's National Poetry Month. This is definitely going to happen, or you know what I mean, something like that. Maybe quarterly or whatever. But I would like to see it become that. But I mean, art is constantly moving and changing, and it's like when the people need it, they need it, and when they don't need it, they don't need it. But I feel like it will continue to be a thing.
Yeah.
But
Who knows?
no pressure, Dad's Garage.
So how did you guys connect? Do you remember when you first?
For me, I remember seeing Theresa on many shows and being like, wow, that person's amazing. And then after a show, I was just like, you're amazing. I think that's what it was.
I remember that happened.
Yeah.
but where was this? Was this like a Java Monkey, or were you doing something else?
I think I did.
Slam?
I did something. I want to say I did something with John Carr. Because I think John Carr's at the crux of our meeting each other.
Maybe it was Right Club.
It might. Oh, it was Right Club.
Maybe it was Right Club. Yeah.
I might have beat John Carr. Right. I'm just kidding. But I have beat you, John Carr. Oh yes. But no, I think it was Right Club when we first met.
Okay.
And then I think I was asked to do a Dark Side of the Room.
Yeah.
And then from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The relationship was set.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I don't usually do stage questions, but it just came up to me. So this is the weird interview thing, right? So give me 3 words that you think of that represent this artist next to you.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it. This is
Truthful, Atlanta, vulnerable. I think those are the 3.
Wow, vulnerable. I like
Oh,
that.
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I cry all the time.
And what are his 3? You got 3?
I think he is courageous. I think Mark has a vision and can see the talent in people. And I think he probably has a not so healthy relationship with Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I made him laugh. Yes, I would. And he has a great laugh, right?
He does. He's got a great laugh. You can't deny that.
I think I should explain the T-Rex thing. So
Wait, before you do that, I just want to.
I just need
you
to
know what,
explain
Mark?
without context. This
We need to be focusing focusing on the fact that the educator at the table, the wordsmith at the table, is the one that I say, give me 3 words, and she gives me a paragraph and a half. Okay?
Hey, I can't truncate. He's fabulous.
Yeah.
But no, explain your Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, we're
All right, so those blow up T-Rex costumes,
yeah.
they're hilarious. So like I started. A friend of mine had one, so for like a couple years, every time I needed one for like a comedy bit,
Because that's what you need sometimes.
Yeah.
Because
So,
you're
like,
not funny enough.
Yeah,
You gotta have it
so
too.
I borrowed that, and then after a couple years, I'm like, I've been doing this for years. I need to get my own. But then when you pay for your own, you're like, I'm using this all the time now. So it's just like I'm just trying to get the use out of like this Jurassic Park blow up costume that I have. And so sometimes it's been necessary, and then other times it has not.
No. It's
so-
just always
But
always
I'm
in your
wearing
car.
it.
Yeah.
It's always in your car just in
It's
case.
there. And I have a couple of props like that where I'm just like, well, I'm this character now because I paid for this thing.
Yeah.
Right. No. And I, the Arts Exchange just reopened, and I'm the literary events coordinator. And at some point in the library, I want to have story time. So, you will definitely at some point see Mark Kendall in a Tyrannosaurus Rex costume reading
story
stories about Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I gotta get my money's worth for this costume.
Hey,
That's right. That's the way you're looking at it. You're just like, I got to ride this thing 300 times before
Yeah.
it's paid for.
I'm writing it off. It's giving off the taxes.
So you just mentioned Arts Exchange. What's going on? Tell me what's up.
So the Arts Exchange is an arts organization that has been around Atlanta for over 30 years. And we used to be in Grant Park area off Cab Avenue. But we have moved now. We're in East Point. We just had our soft opening, and we're about to have our massive opening. And it's a space for artists to get together and create art. We have a main theater. We have a black box. We have the Charles G.K. Riley Memorial Library that I donated my whole educational library, and I have a lot of books.
Wow.
Sorting those books out, I was like, dude,
I was
you
going
could
to
have
say,
bought a house.
how do you let go? How do you let go of certain
Well,
things?
I feel like, see, and this is me being, the hoarder that I am when it comes to books and things like that. I'm letting it go, but not really because I run the joint. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I get still gonna look at my babies.
You just have kind
I
of
just
a
like
den
let other
that's a
people
little
use
removed
them.
from your
Right?
house.
They're not in my house
Yeah.
anymore.
It's in a different wing of your home.
Right, by extension.
The West Wing.
But then I also have an artist studio over there, so I like to do artsy, craftsy things. I like to mix up art and poetry together and try to create bigger, projects. We have a gallery over there. The art show that's up in the gallery right now is amazing. It's called The Art of Values, and it will be up there until, I believe, February 9th. But it's in East Point, and we're just trying to, create art that's out but still close enough to the city that you can get to it.
People don't realize how close East Point is.
Yeah, and with all this building, it's even closer.
Right.
You know,
Getting closer every minute.
So I'm
That's
excited.
cool.
Yeah, it's
That
very
is
cool.
exciting.
It's very
So that's
cool.
where people can find you. They just go down there and look up your books. They'll find you.
Yeah, they
That's
will
it.
find me.
Now, and what do you got? You got some coming up too, or did you just get back from a
Yeah,
comedy
I got
thing,
back
didn't
from
you?
Savannah yesterday. I was in Savannah for the Savannah Comedy Festival, so I was performing my one-person show, The Magic Negro and Other Blackness, and then I did a set with Allison Hastings as part of our two-person show called You Up, which is a comedy sketch show about
How'd things
relationships.
go?
It was fun. It was great. I went to a place in Savannah called Front Porch Improv, which is kind of like a newer improv company that they have over there, and it's really cool. The audiences were like very warm, and because sometimes you go
But
out
it was a
yeah.
festival too, though, right?
It was a festival, but it was mostly like a local audience. So, and with visiting acts, and all the acts that I met were very nice and very funny. But I was pleased, surprised, impressed by Savannah's audiences. So it was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So people want to check out Madmen and Poets.
April 13th, As
April
Garage,
13th.
8 p.m. Saturday.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. National Poetry Month.
That's right.
So that's the month where you're supposed to keep a poem in your pocket.
Oh,
Do
just
it,
in
people.
case. You see Theresa, she's going to ask you for your poem, so you better have it in your pocket.
For real. No,
Yeah.
it's going to happen.
But thanks for coming by. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you so much for
It was
having
great.
us.
Well, that wraps it up for another Good Gracious Show podcast. As always, you can find us online at goodgracioushow.com, and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, usually GG Show Atlanta or Good Gracious Show. I didn't get all the names that you need for the socials way back when. Anyway, that's it. I'm working on some other craziness, and I just gotta keep churning. But I want you to go out and see some of these amazing, talented Southern creatives, and be a good neighbor, hug someone, and we'll see you next week.